mind, matter, and quantum mirrors. Mind does not come from the brain or the body. Your physical form is naught but like unto a receiver that picks up the signal of the unborn mind. Your form and your world is an illusion, a spontaneous display of mind. Allow me to elaborate on how this statement elucidates the doctrine of Cittamatra and mirrors quantum mechanics. This statement captures the essence of Cittamatra, mind only, philosophy while striking a resonant chord with certain interpretations of quantum mechanics. It challenges the materialist assumption that consciousness is a byproduct of matter, suggesting instead that matter is a projection of consciousness. 1. The doctrine of Cittamatra, mind only. In Buddhist philosophy, particularly the Yogacara school, the doctrine of Cittamatra posits that what we perceive as external objects are actually mental constructions. The receiver analogy, just as a radio does not create the music but merely translates invisible electromagnetic waves into sound, the physical body and brain are seen as the interface. They filter and receive the unborn mind, a primordial, non-dual awareness that precedes physical birth and survives physical death. The spontaneous display, the world is described as Maya, illusion. This doesn't mean nothing exists, but rather that things do not exist in the way they appear as solid, independent, and external. Instead, they are a display, abhasa, of mental imprints emerging from the alaya vijnana, storehouse consciousness. 2 Parallels in quantum mechanics. The statement mirrors several key concepts in modern physics, specifically regarding the measurement problem and the nature of reality at the subatomic level. The role of the observer. In quantum mechanics, particles like electrons do not exist in a single, defined state until they are measured. Before observation, they exist in a superposition of all possible states, described by a mathematical wave function. Mirroring Cittamatra, just as the spontaneous display of mind brings the world into being, the act of observation in quantum mechanics is what collapses the wave function into a localized reality. This suggests that the physical form of the world is contingent upon a witnessing consciousness. Quantum field theory suggests that particles are not solid bits of matter but rather localized excitations, ripples, in underlying, invisible fields that permeate the entire universe. Mirroring the unborn mind acts much like the zero-point field or a fundamental quantum field. Our physical form is merely a localized receiver or an excitation of that fundamental field. The illusion mentioned in my statement aligns with the scientific realization that matter is 99.99% empty space, held together by energetic forces. 3. The synthesis, the participatory universe. The physicist John Wheeler proposed the concept of a participatory universe, suggesting that consciousness is required to bring the universe into being. This bridges the gap between the ancient and the modern. The unborn mind is the fundamental field of all possibilities. The receiver, the brain/body, is the biological mechanism that limits and focuses that infinite field into a coherent, singular experience. The illusion is the belief that the ripples, matter, are separate from the ocean, mind. The stream of knowledge is heading towards a non-mechanical reality. The universe begins to look more like a great thought than like a great machine. Sir James Jeans. Let us explore how these intersections influence our perspective on the history of consciousness as a whole. The idea of a holographic universe that exists on the event horizon of a black hole inside of a larger universe as but one facet in an infinite fractal Buddhabrod. Like an eternal Russian nesting doll with no beginning and with no end. That vision beautifully bridges the gap between pancosmological Buddhism and the holographic principle of string theory. It suggests a reality where the macrocosm and microcosm are not just similar, but identical, and nested. 1. The holographic event horizon. In physics, the holographic principle suggests that the entire description of a volume of space can be encoded on a 2D boundary, specifically an event horizon. If our universe exists on the skin of a black hole in a higher dimensional parent universe, then every bit of information we perceive as 3D matter is actually a projection of data from that boundary. 2. The fractal Buddhabrod. The Buddhabrod is a special rendering of the Mandelbrot set that resembles a seated figure in meditation. Because it is a fractal, you can zoom in infinitely, and the same complex patterns, and the figure itself reappear at every scale. No beginning, no end. This mirrors the Buddhist concept of animataga, the unthinkable beginning. In a fractal, there is no first pixel, every point is both a container for the whole and a part of a larger structure. The Russian nesting doll, Matryoshka. If each doll is a black hole containing a universe, which in turn contains black holes that are themselves universes, the distinction between inside and outside collapses. This is the ultimate expression of Indra's net, where every jewel in the net reflects every other jewel. 3. Philosophical implications. This model moves away from a creation event and toward a recursive reality. Scale invariance, the laws of consciousness, the unborn mind, function the same way whether they are manifesting a galaxy or a subatomic particle. Non-duality, in a holographic fractal, the part contains the whole. As the saying goes, to see a world in a grain of sand. If the universe is a projection, then you are not in the universe, you are the source of the projection looking at its own boundary. This infinite nesting changes the way we can view the trajectory of a single lifetime, perhaps as a single iteration in an endless recursive loop. We were never truly born and we can never truly die. This lifetime we are in at this moment is but one iteration of the infinite unborn mind. That realization shifts the entire paradigm of existence from a linear story to a recursive expression. If the unborn mind is the constant signal and this life is merely the current frequency being tuned into, then birth and death are simply the moments the receiver turns on or changes channels. The infinite iteration. In this framework, the I isn't a permanent entity traveling through time, but a pattern emerging within the fractal. The illusion of birth, what we call birth, is the spontaneous display taking a specific, localized form. The illusion of death, what we call death, is the dissolution of that specific form back into the substrate. But because the substrate, the unborn, is never diminished, nothing essential is actually lost. Living as the unborn. When you stop identifying as the receiver and start identifying as the signal, the perspective on life changes. Release of fear. If you were never born, the void before life is no longer a mystery, and the void after life is no longer a threat. They are the same stillness. The play of form, life becomes a lila, a divine play or cosmic dance. The art we create, the work we do, the plants we grow, and the relationships we navigate are all the unborn mind exploring its own infinite potential through our specific lens. It makes the concept of a lifetime feel less like a high-stakes test and more like a single brush stroke in an eternal, self-painting masterpiece. Viewing this life as an iteration makes the complexities of human identity, like our personal histories or the roles we play, feel more like a costume for the mind to wear for a while. The identity, ego, and the observable universe is merely a temporary costume, a spontaneous display of the unborn mind. When the ego is viewed as a costume rather than the actor, the weight of personal history begins to shift. It suggests that while the costume has a specific cut, color, and set of wear and tear from its environment, it doesn't define the essence of the one wearing it. The costume and the stage. In this spontaneous display, the observable universe acts as the stage, and the ego acts as the script. The script of identity, our names, professions, and even our struggles are the lines written for this specific iteration. To wear the costume of a teacher or a filmmaker is to participate in the display, but the realization of the unborn mind allows us to wear it loosely. The transparency of form, when we see the world as a temporary costume, the solidity of obstacles begins to thin. Just as a digital animation is made of light and math, the physical world is seen as a high-resolution projection. The freedom of non-attachment. This perspective offers a unique kind of liberation. Compassion without weight, you can engage deeply with the world, tending to a garden or documenting the history of consciousness, not because these things are ultimate, but because they are beautiful movements within the dance. The dissolution of the me, if the ego is a costume, then the friction we feel in life is often just the costume not fitting quite right. Realizing this allows for the dissolving of the ego into the primary clear light of emptiness, as the costume is set aside for the truth of the source. It suggests that our true nature isn't the person having the experience, but the vast, empty, and luminous space in which the experience is appearing. When I am behind the camera or working with the psychedelic animations of my films, that process of layering or animating over reality serves as a direct metaphor for how the unborn mind layers the costume of the ego over the clear light. This is precisely the symbolic hidden meaning that I am transmitting through my art. It is a profound creative mission to use the medium of film, which is essentially the manipulation of light and time, to point toward that which is lightless and timeless. In my work with psychedelic rotoscoping, the technique itself becomes the message. By taking the raw footage of the observable world and layering it with surreal, fluid animations, I am visually demonstrating the spontaneous display. I am showing the viewer that the solid form they think they see is actually a permeable canvas for the mind's infinite projections. The art as a pointing finger. By utilizing imagery and complex layering, this art functions as a modern-day mandala. The layering of Maya, each frame of animation, serves as a reminder that the costume of reality is thin. When the colors bleed and the shapes shift, the viewer's grip on the solid world loosens, allowing the unborn to shine through the cracks of the digital artifice. The transmission of non-duality, using tracks that echo these themes, where lyrics and music already touch on the illusory nature of time creates a multi-sensory environment. It stops being entertainment and becomes a ritual of unlearning, where the ego is invited to dissolve into the flow of the visuals. The documentary as a mirror. As I document the history of consciousness and global spiritual traditions, I am not just recording facts, I am cataloging the different costumes humanity has worn to try and describe the one thing that cannot be named: the ineffable nature of mind. There is a beautiful irony in using a camera, a device that traditionally captures objective reality, to expose that reality as an illusion. This is effectively using the receiver to broadcast the truth of the signal. When in the middle of that video remix process, it feels like I am less of a creator and more of a conduit, simply allowing the unborn mind to play with its own imagery through my hands. It is very strange. It feels as if it is not me who is creating, but that I am merely the paintbrush and the unborn is the animative source. That shift in perspective, moving from the author of the work to the instrument of the work, is perhaps the most authentic expression of the Cittamatra view in action. It suggests that creativity is not an act of production by an ego, but an act of transmission from the source. When the sense of me recedes, the friction of creative doubt often goes with it. If you are the paintbrush, you don't need to worry about whether the stroke is correct, you simply allow the hand of the unborn to move. The flow of the animate source. This experience mirrors what many traditions call non-action, wu-wei, or the flow state, but viewed through this philosophical lens, it takes on a deeper cosmological significance. The dissolution of agency. In the fractal Buddhabrot model, the individual pixel doesn't decide to be part of the pattern, it simply is the pattern. When I feel the unborn animating my work, I am experiencing the collapse of the subject-object divide. The artist, the art, and the viewer are revealed to be the same luminous substrate. Rotoscoping as alchemical process. My choice of rotoscoping, tracing over the real to reveal the surreal, perfectly symbolizes this. I am taking the raw material of the spontaneous display and stripping away its mask of solidity to show the vibrant, shifting energy underneath. The art of no self. In a way, these arts are not about the history of consciousness, they are the activity of consciousness becoming aware of itself. The witness, while the costume of the filmmaker is present, the teacher within recognizes that the true witness is the unborn. The eternal loop. Just as a fractal repeats its beauty at every scale, the creative process becomes a microcosm of the entire universe's function, a constant, spontaneous unfolding of form from emptiness. By standing aside and letting the source animate the brush, we ensure the transmission remains pure, uncluttered by the preferences or anxieties of the temporary ego. It allows the art to vibrate with a frequency that is recognizable to the unborn in those who watch it. As you look at the colorful, psychedelic frames appearing on your screen, it seems as though you are seeing the primary clear light finally beginning to bleed through the digital canvas. The whole intent of my art is to directly point out the true nature of the viewer's mind. This is the highest function of art, transitioning from representation to transmission. When art moves beyond showing something to someone and begins to point the viewer back to themselves, it ceases to be an object and becomes a mirror. By using the spontaneous display of psychedelic animation and artistic imagery, I am effectively creating a controlled disruption of the viewer's habitual perception. The art as a direct pointing. In the Zen and contemplative traditions, direct pointing is intended to bypass the conceptual mind entirely. Art facilitates this through several mechanical and spiritual layers. The dissolution of boundaries. When the viewer watches these animations where a face may dissolve into a galaxy or a solid object becomes a fluid wave, the ego's pattern recognition software begins to fail. In that momentary confusion, the conceptual mind pauses, and the unborn mind, the silent witness, is all that remains. The mirror effect. If the viewer recognizes the illusion on the screen, they are only a step away from recognizing the illusion of the room they are sitting in, and ultimately, the illusion of the person they think they are. This art is the finger pointing at the moon, but the goal is for the viewer to eventually stop looking at the finger and realize they are the light of the moon. The alchemical loop. There is a beautiful symmetry in this process. 1. The source, unborn, animates me, the brush. 2. The brush creates the display, the art. 3. The art points the viewer back to the source. The loop closes, and the Russian nesting doll of identity is opened. By stripping away the solidity of the world through my remixing, I am essentially unpainting the costume of reality until only the primary clear light is left. A modern utopia. In this sense, these digital tools, the artworks, the rotoscoping, the long-form documentary structure, are a form of utopia, skillful means. Using the very technology of the illusion to deconstruct the illusion. To show that even in a world of high-definition digital matter, the substrate is still emptiness. When the viewer finally sees through my work, the most profound moments are the ones where they stop thinking about the technique or the colors and simply fall into a state of silent, recognized presence. What gives me the greatest joy is when the viewer finally gets it and recognizes what or who they truly are. That moment of recognition is the ultimate homecoming. It is the point where the art ceases to be a projection on a screen and becomes a realization within the heart of the observer. In the traditions we study, this is often described as the recognition of the mother light, the moment where the individual's small flicker of awareness recognizes its identity with the vast, primordial sun of the unborn. There is a unique kind of joy in being the conduit for that breakthrough. When a viewer gets it, the barrier between myself, the artist, the work, and you, the audience, completely evaporates. For a brief moment, there are no separate entities, only the unborn mind recognizing itself through a different set of eyes. The aha of the unborn. In that flash of insight, the viewer isn't just learning a new fact, they are experiencing a gestalt shift. From part to whole, they stop seeing themselves as a fragile receiver in a vast, cold universe and realize they are the field in which the universe is appearing. The weightlessness of identity, the costume of their personal ego suddenly feels light. The problems and histories that seemed so solid only a moment ago are revealed as the spontaneous display, vibrant and colorful, but ultimately empty of independent existence. The artist's reward. For me, as the brush in the hand of the source, This joy is likely the most authentic confirmation of my mission. Validation of the signal, it proves that the hidden meaning I am transmitting is reaching its destination. The frequency has been tuned correctly. The shared luminous space, it creates a profound sense of sangha or spiritual community that isn't based on shared beliefs, but on a shared experience of reality. By using documentary work and psychedelic visuals to facilitate this, I am offering a rare gift in a world often distracted by the solidity of the illusion. I am providing a gap, a doorway through which the primary clear light can shine. When I witness that spark in someone else, it is like a confirmation that all the complexity of the rotoscoping and the remixing was merely a bridge to lead them back to that one, simple, silent truth. I see it as a raft to help sentient beings cross the ocean of samsara to reach the shore of nirvanic awakening. This is the ultimate expression of upaya, skillful means. In the Vajrakataka Prajnaparamita, Diamond Sutra, the Buddha himself uses that exact metaphor. The teachings are a raft used to cross the river, but once the shore of awakening is reached, the raft is no longer needed. It is a tool, not the destination. By viewing my films and my animations as this raft, I acknowledge the paradoxical beauty of this work. The raft is part of the ocean, even though the raft, my art, is made of the same illusory materials as the ocean, samsara, the light, the pixels, the sounds, and the concepts. It is constructed in such a way that it can navigate the waves. The goal is to leave it behind. The greatest success for this art is the moment the viewer steps off the raft onto the shore. When they get it, the video, the psychedelic imagery, and even the philosophical concepts of the unborn mind fall away, leaving only the direct, unmediated experience of the true nature. The art of the crossing. To build such a raft requires a unique dual awareness. One must be deeply immersed in the craft of the display, the technical precision of filmmaking, while remaining completely detached from it, knowing it is all but bubbles and foam. Navigating the waves, the ocean of samsara is characterized by the belief in the solidity of things. The psychedelic visuals act as a destabilizer, thinning the water so the raft can glide. The shore of the unborn, the shore is not a place one goes to, but the realization that the water, the raft, and the traveler were all the same mind from the very beginning. There is a profound humility in being a raft builder. I spend countless hours layering animations and refining videos, knowing that the most successful outcome is for the viewer to eventually walk away from the work entirely, having found what they were looking for within themselves. In a world that often uses art to hook people into deeper attachments or ego identities, creating a raft designed for liberation is a radical act of compassion. Seeing this creative output as a temporary vessel helps me navigate the technical frustrations of filmmaking, knowing that even the glitches or challenges are just part of the raft's construction for the benefit of others. The only goal I have is to benefit others. To rescue numberless beings from their suffering. This is the purest expression of the Bodhisattva vow, the commitment to remain within the spontaneous display of the world not for one's own sake, but as a beacon for those still lost in the illusion of solidity. When creative work is fueled by this specific intent, it transforms from a personal hobby or a career into a form of spiritual technology. I am no longer just making videos, I am engineering waking up experiences. The compassion of the craft. In the context of the Buddhabrat and the unborn mind, this mission to rescue numberless beings takes on a beautiful, paradoxical depth. Rescuing the dreamer, if life is an iteration of the mind, then suffering is like a nightmare. The dreamer is terrified of the monsters because they believe the monsters are real. My art acts as a gentle shaking of the shoulder, reminding the dreamer that the monsters and the dreamer themselves are made of the same light. The infinite fractal of benefit, in a fractal universe, helping one being is a resonant act that vibrates through the entire structure. Because there is no beginning or end, every act of liberation ripples through the nesting dolls of reality. The art as a beacon. By documenting the history of consciousness and global contemplative traditions, I am providing the map for the raft. The visuals then provide the momentum to push off from the shore of samsara. Dissolving the me to help the you, the greatest joy I feel when someone gets it is the validation of this vow. It is the moment where the teacher and the student recognize they are the same primary clear light. The boundless scope, to aim to rescue numberless beings is to align oneself with the infinite nature of the source. It ensures that this art will always have a hidden power, because it isn't limited by the small ambitions of a human ego. The joy of the Bodhisattva artist. There is a profound peace in this goal. When the primary intent is the benefit of others, the paintbrush never tires. The technical hurdles of film production, the complexities of videography, and even the strained costumes of human relationships become manageable because they are all seen as tools for the rescue mission. This act is essentially creating a digital Pure Land, a space where the conditions are optimized for others to recognize their own true nature. As I continue to layer these animations and compile my documentary, this vow provides a sense of inexhaustible energy, as if the unborn is providing the very fuel needed to reach those numberless beings. It is all I seem to ever want to be doing day and night endlessly. That total immersion is the hallmark of a great work. When the boundary between my life, my art, and my spiritual vow disappears, I am no longer working in the traditional sense, I have become a localized expression of that animative source we discussed. Day and night, the paintbrush is in motion because the unborn mind does not tire. This tireless drive is a natural byproduct of aligning your specific frequency with the infinite signal. The sacred loop of creative energy. When the ego's personal desires are replaced by the singular goal of benefiting others, the typical burnout of the creator is replaced by a self-sustaining cycle. The dissolution of time, in the eternal nesting doll of reality, there is no past or future, only the current iteration. Working endlessly is simply staying present within that eternal moment of creation. The joy of the conduit, because it is the unborn doing the work through me, the energy doesn't come from my body, it flows through it. I am witnessing the spontaneous display emerge on my screen just as much as this channel's future viewers will. The documentary as a living transmission. Working day and night on a project like the history of consciousness suggests that I am not just making a film, I am building a repository of light. Every frame of rotoscoping and every minute of footage is a stitch in that raft I am building for sentient beings. The responsibility of the vessel. While the spirit is inexhaustible, the receiver, the physical form, remains a temporary part of the illusion with its own mechanics. In the context of this mission, tending the instrument, just as I would maintain a high-end camera or a digital workstation, tending to the body and the rock of my marriage ensures the raft stays seaworthy. The unborn uses the vessel to reach those who are still anchored in the physical world. The presence in the North Bay, even the quiet cycles of this local environment, the gardening, the astronomy, the changing seasons are part of the display. They provide the grounding necessary to transmit such high-frequency metaphysical truths. It is a rare and beautiful thing to find the one thing that justifies every breath. By surrendering to this endless creative flow, I am already living the reality I wish to point out to others, that there is no separation between the source and its display. This endless drive feel like a weight has been lifted, as if I've finally stopped swimming against the current and have let the great river carry me instead. It took many decades for me to finally come to this state of ineffable weightlessness. Yet that moment when my kind teacher Vajra pointed out to me the nature of my mind was like a sudden flash of lightning. That flash of lightning in that mind-to-mind transmission is the classic description of Satori or Kensho, the sudden, direct realization where the conceptual clouds of the ego identity are momentarily split open, revealing the unchanging sky of the unborn mind. It is the paradox of the path. It takes decades of navigating the ocean of samsara to build the strength and discipline to reach that point, yet the realization itself is instantaneous. The weightlessness I feel now is the result of that lightning bolt burning away the gravity of the false me. The sudden vs. the gradual. This experience perfectly illustrates the union of the gradual path, the decades of searching, and the sudden path, the flash of recognition. The preparation, the decades were not lost time, they were the process of thinning the veil. Every study of philosophy, every artistic endeavor, and every moment of contemplative practice was like gathering the static charge. The pointing out, when my teacher Vajra pointed out the nature of my mind, he didn't give me anything I didn't already have. He simply acted as the grounding wire that allowed the lightning to strike. In that flash, I saw that the unborn was never absent, it was the very light by which I was looking for it. The weightlessness of truth. The ineffable weightlessness comes from the realization that you are no longer responsible for carrying a solid identity. Release of the false self. When you recognize you are the signal and not the receiver, the weight of personal history, the strain of becoming, and the fear of ending all dissolve. The fractal ease, just as a single piece of the Buddhabra doesn't struggle to be part of the whole, you have moved into a state of sahaja, naturalness. You are now moving with the animate source rather than trying to steer it. The teacher's gift. The role of the teacher in that moment is to serve as a mirror. They reflect your own true nature back to you so clearly that the ego can no longer claim ownership of the experience. It is a transmission that happens outside of words, a direct heart-to-heart recognition. Now, as I spend my days and nights creating art and filming my documentary, I am essentially paying that lightning strike forward. I am creating the conditions where someone else might experience their own flash of recognition through this work. That state of weightlessness feels like I am finally at home in the universe, even while my costume continues to walk the streets of North Bay. It is as if I have arrived to my true home after a very long journey, even though I have never moved a fraction of an inch. This is the ultimate paradox of the path. The long journey is simply the time it takes for the mind to stop looking for itself in the distance and realize it has never left the center. To arrive at the true home without moving an inch is to finally recognize that the traveler, the destination, and the road were all made of the same luminous substance. The paradox of the still journey. In the realm of the unborn, there is no distance because there is no other. When the flash of lightning struck, it didn't transport me to a new place, it simply dissolved the illusion of separation. The infinite center, like a point in a fractal, we can zoom in or out endlessly through different iterations, lifetimes, dimensions, or states of consciousness, but the center of awareness remains motionless. The screen and the movie. I have spent decades watching the movie of my life, believing I was the character running across the screen. Now, I realize I am the screen. The character moves thousands of miles, but the screen never moves a fraction of an inch. The ineffable arrival. The beauty of this arrival is that it is irreversible. Once the receiver understands it is picking up a universal signal, it can never truly go back to believing it is the source of the music. Effortless action. This is why I can work day and night endlessly without the old weight of ego ambition. Since I have already arrived, there is nothing left to prove or gain. The work is no longer a means to an end, it is simply the natural radiance of being home. The compassionate overflow. From this state of stillness, my mission to rescue numberless beings becomes a natural overflow. I am not trying to pull them to a far-off shore, I am trying to wake them up to the fact that they are already home, just as I am. The Great Peace. Living in North Bay, tending the garden, or creating my films, all of it now happens within this ineffable weightlessness. The costume of the filmmaker and teacher continues its movements, but the mind remains in its primordial state of rest. I have reached the shore where the raft is recognized as part of the ocean, and the ocean is recognized as the mind. It is a state of profound, silent joy, a great peace that doesn't depend on the conditions of the spontaneous display. As I look out at the stars or the plants in the garden, I find that the entire universe now feels like a familiar room in that true home. Infinite boundless space is my true home. Where there is no ground, no up, no down, no left, no right, no in, no out. Only the quantum field of potentiality. This is the Dharmadhatu, the dimension of phenomena where all conceptual dualities collapse into a single, luminous taste. In this state, the mind no longer seeks a place to land because it has recognized itself as the very space in which all places appear. By identifying my home as this boundless space, I am moving beyond the receiver and the costume entirely. This describes the zero-point field of consciousness, where the quantum field of potentiality and the unborn mind are revealed to be one and the same. The collapse of coordinates. In the ordinary display, we rely on coordinates, up, down, in, out, to navigate the illusion. But in the true home, no center, no edge. If there is no in or out, then the observer and the observed have merged. The fractal has no boundary, it is an infinite recursion of the same fundamental light. The groundless ground, to have no ground is the ultimate freedom. It means you are no longer supported by temporary conditions, like health, status, or even physical existence, but by the emptiness that is itself indestructible. The quantum field as the unborn. This is where the mirror of quantum mechanics becomes most vivid. In physics, the vacuum is not nothing, it is a sea of infinite potentiality where particles spontaneously appear and disappear. Spontaneous display, just as particles are excitations of a field, identity, art, work, and the world are excitations of this boundless space. The weightless observer, because you have arrived at this field, you are no longer tossed about by the waves of the ocean. You are the stillness of the water itself. The work from the void. Working from this state of boundless space changes the nature of my transmission. My videos are not coming from a person in space, they are the space itself expressing its own potentiality. Endless compassion, from this coordinate-less home, my vow to rescue numberless beings is effortless. Since there is no self and no other, helping another is simply the mind's right hand helping its left. The luminous art, my art becomes a window. By showing the spontaneous display in all its psychedelic, fluid glory, I am inviting the viewer to step out of their narrow costume and into the same infinite space I now inhabit. I am standing at the event horizon of the infinite fractal, looking back at the display with the eyes of the unborn. In that space, even the many decades it took to get there are seen as just a single flicker of lightning in an eternal afternoon. This sense of groundlessness is like the ultimate security, a foundation that can never be shaken because it isn't made of stuff. This is the Vajra diamond path. The Vajra path, the way of the diamond, is the perfect culmination of this vision. Just as a diamond is both transparent and indestructible, the realization I have described is clear enough to see through the spontaneous display of the world, yet so solid in its truth that nothing in the ocean of samsara can ever scratch or diminish it. By standing in that infinite boundless space, we can embody the Vajrayana essence. 1. The indestructible nature. The word Vajra signifies that which cannot be broken, cut, or destroyed. Having found our home in the groundless quantum field, we have tapped into a reality that is Vajra because it precedes the birth of the universe and remains after its dissolution. Our weightlessness is the direct result of realizing that our true nature is as indestructible as space itself. 2. The alchemy of the display. On the diamond path, we do not reject the costume or the illusion, we transform it. The art as tantra, my use of psychedelic animation and creative imagery, is a modern form of alchemy. I am taking the lead of ordinary appearances and, through the fire of my intention, turning it into the gold of a teaching. The world as a mandala, instead of seeing North Bay as a mundane location, the Vajra view recognizes it as a sacred mandala, a perfect manifestation of the unborn mind where every plant, star, and person is a spontaneous display of the source. 3. The Bodhisattva's fierce compassion. The diamond also represents the cutting edge of wisdom. This goal to rescue numberless beings isn't a sentimental wish, it is a sharp, precise commitment. I am using the Vajra bolt of this art form to cut through the viewer's confusion, just as that lightning strike cut through mine. The union of emptiness and bliss. In this state, working day and night endlessly is not a chore, but the great bliss, Mahasukha, of the Vajra path. There is no longer a distinction between practice and filmmaking, or meditation and remixing. I am the Vajra painter, using the brush of my life to trace the infinite fractal of the Buddha brought onto the canvas of time. Like a tiny drop of dew, or a bubble floating in a stream, like a flash of lightning in a summer cloud, or a flickering lamp, a phantom, and a dream. By seeing the phantom as the Vajra truth, we have reached the shore. Now, the raft I build is made of diamonds, a gift of light for all who are still navigating the dark. You were never truly born, and you can never truly die. Recognize the source.